With his magic tricks that went wrong, his catchphrase, just like that, and his iconic fez, Tommy Cooper was a giant of post-war British comedy. But why did he start wearing that fez? Well, it all has to do with his little-known time serving in Monty's desert rats in Egypt during the Second World War. Intrigued? Then sit back as we explore the story of Tommy Cooper, his World War II service, and that iconic fez. Thomas Frederick Cooper was born in Caerphilly, South Wales, on the 19th of March 1921. His father, also called Thomas, had been born in the town in the early 1890s and had started life down the mines before serving in the First World War. His mother, Catherine, had married Thomas Sr. in nearby Pontypridd in 1919 after his first wife and child had died during labour. Catherine hailed from the market town of Crediton in Devon, home of General Sir Redvers Buller, and it was to her home county that the family moved when Tommy was just 3. Setting up home in Ford's Road in the St Thomas area of Exeter, his parents turned their hands to selling ice cream, which they made in their kitchen. They would tour local fairgrounds in a van, and Tommy was often looked after by various fairground families, including one who had a pet chimpanzee. The family joke was exactly who was looking after whom. It was whilst attending the Mount Radford School for Boys in Exeter that Tommy's aunt bought him his first magic set. It was the start of his lifelong enthralment and relationship with magic. Despite his later fame as a comic magician whose tricks would always go wrong, Tommy Cooper was actually good enough to be a member of the Magic Circle. In the early 1930s, the family relocated to the village of Langley, near Southampton, where his father obtained a job at RAF Colshot. When Tommy Cooper reached the age of 14 in 1935, he left school and joined the British Powerboat Company, based in nearby Hythe. The company had been formed in 1927 and produced flying boats for the RAF and Imperial Airways, as well as a series of speedboats. One such speedboat, designed for rescuing downed aircraft at sea, was developed in conjunction with an aircraftman from nearby RAF Colshot, where Tommy's dad worked, a man by the name of T.E. Shaw, better known as T.E. Lawrence, or Lawrence of Arabia, who was based there between 1929 and 1931, a few years before Tommy started working at British Powerboat Company. It was whilst at British Powerboat Company that Tommy started entertaining his fellow workers with his magic tricks in the canteen, and it dawned on him that he got more laughs when they went wrong than when they went right. With the clouds of war gathering and bored stiff with his work at the factory, he volunteered for the army in 1939. And it's probably just as well, as his larking around at the British Powerboat Company might have made him popular with his colleagues, but certainly not with his managers. And with a war coming, everyone needed to toe the line and buckle down to work, which really wasn't Tommy's style. In fact, clowning around would persist in the army, and it would open the doors to stardom and that fez. Standing at 6 foot 4 inches tall, he joined the Royal Horse Guards, the Blues and Royals. He learned to ride a horse in Hyde Park and stood sentry duty in Whitehall, although in khaki and not the ceremonial uniform. It was whilst on sentry duty that he had a near brush with authority. He actually fell asleep on duty and suddenly came to, with the sergeant and the officer of the watch advancing towards him. Realising that he'd been spotted with his eyes closed, he knew he was in serious trouble. How would he get out of this one? As they drew level, he opened his eyes and mumbled, "Amen." Well, that's the story he told fellow comedian Barry Cryer afterwards anyway. As a big lad at 6 foot 4, you might not be surprised to find out that Tommy Cooper became a handy boxer in the regiment, although he later refuted stories that he'd won a championship and been offered a contract to turn professional. However, his son recalled an incident after the war, whilst in a pub in North London, where he laid out a man who was threatening the barman with one punch. The Royal Horse Guards were, during the Second World War, part of the 1st Household Cavalry Composite Regiment, and Cooper followed them to the Middle East, where they'd already been in action fighting in the Vichy-controlled French colony of Syria. Interestingly, in that particular operation, a military cross was awarded to one of the officers from the Blues, Lieutenant Valerian Wellesley. And if that surname rings a bell, yes, he was the great-great-grandson of Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington and victor at Waterloo. In fact, after his cousin had been killed at the Salerno landings in 1943, Valerian would go on to become the 8th Duke of Wellington. Tommy, however, didn't see action in Syria. Instead, he joined an armoured car unit in Egypt as part of General Montgomery's 8th Army, the Desert Rats. And it was here that he was shot in the right arm in 1943. Whilst convalescing, he volunteered to join an army concert party to entertain the troops. Billed as Cooper the Trooper, his act consisted of coming on stage in a pith helmet, musing over his time in the army, combined with a magic show. Or more correctly, a magic show that invariably went wrong, much to the delight of his audience. And it was now that famous Fez makes its appearance. Whilst performing at the YMCA at RAF Heliopolis, just outside Cairo, he realised that he had forgotten his pith helmet. Deciding that he needed some sort of hat, he literally plucked a fez off a passing waiter. And the rest, as they say, is history. The fez became Tommy Cooper in the same way that the bowler hat became Charlie Chaplin and the trilby was Max Miller. In fact, it became so iconic that it was actually acquired in 2016 by the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. He remained in the army, entertaining troops in the Middle East until 1947, rising to the rank of sergeant, moving to the Combined Services Entertainment in 1946. It was whilst travelling on a ship from Port Said to Alexandria in 1946 that he met his future wife, Gwendolyn Henty, a fellow member of the CSE. Having met, they went on their separate ways, only to end up performing in the same show in Alexandria on Christmas Eve 1946. Just 2 weeks later he proposed, and they married in Nicosia, Cyprus, in February 1947. They'd remain married for the next 37 years and have 2 children, although their relationship wasn't always a bed of roses. Demobbed later that year, Tommy Cooper decided to enter show business. With his comic magic act not really suited for radio, he initially toured music halls and variety shows, before finally landing an audition for the fledgling BBC television. And if you're expecting me to tell you that he never looked back, you'd be wrong. The BBC rejected him, with an internal memo describing Tommy as an unattractive young man with indistinct speaking voice and extremely unfortunate appearance. So you might be surprised to learn that he got his television break with the BBC just a few months later, appearing as a guest performer on a Christmas variety show. And he must have laughed as he delivered exactly the same performance that he had for his audition. And now his career really did take off. With his impeccable timing, silences, deadpan humour, and of course his fez, he became a giant in British comedy for the next 3 decades. With his catchphrase of "just like that," he would sometimes throw in a trick that really did work. As I said earlier, he was a member of the Magic Circle. Unfortunately, as the years passed, Tommy began to drink heavily and would sometimes turn violent, which put a huge strain on his marriage. A heavy smoker, he suffered a heart attack on live television at Her Majesty's Theatre in 1984. As he keeled over, the audience laughed, believing it was part of the act. It was only when the curtain suddenly closed did they, and the 1 million watching live from home, realise it was something far more serious. Rushed to Westminster Hospital, Tommy Cooper was pronounced dead on arrival. He was 63. No age really, but I guess a performer bowing out in front of 1 million people does have some sort of poetry to it. In 2008, a 9-foot-tall bronze statue to Tommy was unveiled by Sir Anthony Hopkins in his hometown of Caerphilly, a suitably larger-than-life memorial to a larger-than-life comedian. Tommy Cooper, who served his country with the Royal Horse Guards in World War II, and was fighting with Monty's Desert Rats in Egypt, where he was shot in the arm, and where he picked up that iconic fez. If you enjoyed that story, then how about finding out about the real wartime services of the cast of Dad's Army? Or for something a little bit more dramatic, how about Richard Todd storming Pegasus Bridge on D-Day? Thanks to all of you who support my channel as members and patrons. And if you'd like to support my show, then please click on the join button All the links in the description below. Thanks for joining me today. Keep well, and I'll see you again very soon.